Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Blind Ambition with Jack Kelly. It's your friend Rick, and today we have kind of a special topic to discuss. It's remote work, it's Elon Musk, it's name calling, it's this concept of what is morally right. Jack, I don't know if you've heard this, but a few weeks ago, Elon Musk had this kind of bombshell interview with CNBC. It was at a Tesla factory or a SpaceX factory because it had that factory look behind him. And what he basically told the anchor, the host, was remote workers needed to get off their goddamn moral high horse. There's some kind of, remote work is great for me, but not for anyone else. And the examples that he gave were, this quote unquote laptop class, these white collar techie professionals that want to work from home, they want to travel abroad and kind of live this digital nomad life, but they still expect the restaurant person to not work remotely, right? Because they expect to be served there. Tesla and SpaceX, those car makers, those rocket makers, they obviously can't build from the comfort of their own home on their own, right? They have to go to an actual workplace and collaborate with people. And a lot of people, especially in the tech industry, were really upset by Elon Musk's comments, right? They're thinking like, oh God, Elon, he's like the awkward grandpa at Thanksgiving dinner that you don't know what to do with it. Like, there's grandpa again. Have you seen this, Jack?
Yes. So wait, there's a lot to unpack. Let me take a little bit of it at a time. First of all, with Musk, you gotta understand, he's talking up his own book. He has businesses, building cars, building rocket ships, right? Building solar panels. You can't do that in your living room. You can't do it on your dining room table. It doesn't work that way. So I think it's a game. It's a game. He's speaking to the people who are mission critical to making Teslas and making SpaceX and making, Neuralink. And you can't do that at home. So it's to then, say, Elon Musk, you're terrible. You're an awful, dreadful human being. Well, you got to think, what's in it for him? Now, if he would say, okay, we should all work remotely, then he's just kind of dumping on all the people who are in the factories, and that's not cool. And that's what's making it go. And if he would do that, he's going to get. You don't want somebody work on your Tesla who's ticked off because you want your brakes to work.
Yeah,
you don't want your engine to explode.
The smartest, nerdiest person,
right?
the most rigorous, diligent person. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to love those people. You want to go down on the floor and shake their hands and get them a drink and take care of them. And let's be frank, the office kind of workers, they probably have hybrid and all that. I'm sure they have some remote, and they get it too. They're not dumb. If they're working for Musk, they're not dummies. They get it. They understand. They're not taking it personal. The ones who took it personally at the beginning when he was just firing everybody, that was a little different. When he first took over Twitter, that was a little different. He just he set the stage for what happened with all the layoffs, right? He's like, I don't like this. There are too many people who are working here who aren't doing anything. You're fired. That's a terrible impression. I don't even know why I tried to do that. So he just, he got rid of him in real time. And then everybody woke up, Mark Zuckerberg goes, wait a minute. I could fire people and my stock price goes up. This is awesome. I'm going to keep doing that. And then multiply that by all these other companies. So you had that chain reaction of just, if you think about it, how many times did you see, Apple, Amazon, whatever, when they say they're not so much Apple, but when they started laying off people, their stock price boomed. And then so they applauded for people getting laid off. Now, fast forward, you see they're starting to push back to get to the office. Apple, Meta, they're all like, well, 3 days a week. 3 days a week, we want you in there. Salesforce, what are they doing? They're offering like a donation. So if you go into the office, we're going to give $10 for your favorite charity.
In your name.
And they're like, wait, give me the freaking $10 and I'll stay home and I'll give you $20. I'll give a $20 donation. What are you doing? So it's an interesting thing. It's a game, right?
I mean, I could see it both ways, but generally, I think Elon is right? Because again, it's back to the context, right? He's speaking to his factory workers, or like the folks that just have to be in person, right? And I mean, to his point, there is a bit of hypocrisy, right? Where the people that work remotely, they still expect everyone else, kind of the service people, um, just other different industries outside of tech, to still have to go to an office or a current workplace, right? Because they expect to be served. If something happens at their home, they expect someone to come in and fix it. When they go to lunch at a restaurant, they expect those people to be there. These folks can't work remotely. So there is this kind of let them eat cake moment, right?
Yeah.
That he's like kind of pointing out on behalf of like the tech workers that are really kind of on their moral high ground about wanting to have that autonomy and work from home. I could see that.
But look at the other side. Historically, whenever there's a tough economy in the past, it was the blue collar workers and the frontline workers who really lost their jobs.
Right.
But think about it. This time around, it's a white collar recession. So in the tech industries, you know better than anyone, Rick, it's what 200,000 now in 2023 that were let
Plus,
go? Plus,
right.
well, how much
Plus.
now? More than
It's about
200?
no, yeah. I think it's close to 220,000 now.
Jeez. So think about it. So the white collar workers aren't doing that well either now. So it's not as if the laptop class is all sitting pretty and comfortable. And it's not just tech. Wall Street's laying off people. Morgan Stanley recently announced, they're laying off some more people. Goldman Sachs, no, not a lot. But then again, they're not as huge as some of these big tech companies in terms of the personnel. The media, think of how Vice just went bankrupt. So BuzzFeed,
The Los
they're
Angeles
not.
Times.
So the white collar, college educated people are in trouble now. When you put on AI, dude, this is going to be trouble for them. I don't think in the next 5 years it's going to be easy for white collar laptop professionals who are overeducated, as like Dave Sachs would say, the guy all in podcast guy who would
Yep.
say, that they got paid too much money for their college educations for liberal degrees, and now they think they know everything, but they are not going to have any jobs.
I mean, that could be the reality, right? But I think what needs to be differentiated is, if you're a professional, look at kind of the stage of career that you're in, right? So if you're entry level, if you're kind of the middle of the pack and you're kind of thinking about what's next, whether you want to be like a super individual contributor, or if you want to start thinking about the management track, the leadership track, managing people, teams, business units, objectives, projects, um, you know, this remote work thing could work in your favor, right? If you're the person that is like earlier and saying, "Hey, I'm just in learning mode. That's my number one job. I'm going to like show up to the office where other people kind of don't want to. I'm going to raise my hand for all the like crummy projects or all the things that no one else wants to do or is avoiding." And, the thing about those projects are they're great, right? Because they kind of lower profile. Everyone kind of knows they stink a bit. But if you're willing to do it and hey, it works out, you get to take all that credit, right? You get to say, "Hey, I did this, I accomplished something. I have a great kind of reward or accomplishment that I could put under my belt, add on to my resume." And if it stinks, well, everyone kind of knew it was a stinker
Mhm.
anyway, right? So you're not going to get the big blame. Whereas, maybe if you're working on a huge project that's like multifunctional and like really large, and you mess up there, well, there's kind of less room for error, right? And so you want to give yourself that latitude, right? Where if you're working remotely, it's kind of harder to manage you and kind of hard to like speak up, and you might not get those like killer projects or killer opportunities.
100%. I coach people that you do want to go to the office. You want to even go to the office, and they get mad at me for saying this. I'll say, not only go to the office 5 days a week. And for the exact reasons you articulated. Because if you're home, you fall off the radar for the most part. They forget who you are. You don't have those serendipitous meetings in the hallway. You miss
Right.
out on just going out for drinks and going out for dinner and taking a client out. Particularly, like you said, if you're young and you're just starting out, you want to get mentored. You want to find somebody who can kind of show you the ropes. You want to learn, and if you're home, it's hard. It's hard to do that. Now, the people who work remotely will say, hey, maybe it's hard, but we'll still figure it out. But it's up to, you don't have to work remote, and you could come in if you want to. So it does make sense, I think, to go in, as you pointed out, learn as much as possible. You become that go-to person in the organization, because if you go to the office and there's only a handful of people, you're going to get all the cool tasks. You're going to get, I know you mentioned about maybe some bad stuff, but you'll get also a lot of the good stuff because you're there. It's proximity bias. Hey, Jack, can you help me with this project? Says the, VP of this, or the, managing director of that. I'm like, yeah, I'd be happy to. Let me do it. And then if I do it well, I'm a rock star. So you have that chance to really fast forward ahead of all your peers. That's like a contrarian kind of take on things. So like for the people who are listening to this, who really want to work remotely, and by the way, I work remotely now too.
Same, me
I do
too.
prefer working in office, but I can't stand the commute after 20 years. So I'm a little different. I'm an old man. I'm cranky. Cranky. I can't do that whole like commute back and forth. But I guess I would if I had to. But so if you get into that office and you get known and you're that go-to person and you get these cool responsibilities, you're just going to blow past everybody else.
Yeah, I have a funny story from my early days. So my first job out of college, I think people who are listening to the Blind Ambition may have heard me talk about my experiences here, but it was a lobbying firm and it's politics. And I'm 22 and I just let my grit just drive my
Mhm.
career. And I raised my hands for the projects that no one wanted to do. You
Yes.
know, um, doing fundraising, I was the only one that wasn't a registered lobbyist at the lobbying firm, so I could do the fundraising. And I smiled for dollars, and I'm calling these people up. Little did I know the people that I'm calling were executives. Like
Mhm.
I was calling the CEO of Zynga. I was
So you too
emailing.
young to really appreciate like who am I calling
I
and get
had
freaked
no
out.
idea who I was calling. I
Yeah.
was emailing. I emailed Mark Benioff, and I had
Yeah.
no idea who he was.
You're like, hey,
And I
Mark,
was,
how you doing, buddy?
yeah, can you give me a few $1,000s? And he's a billionaire, right? Everyone asks him for money because when you have that wealth, right? And I had no idea. So I was calling. I like learned how to use a fax machine by myself. I was scanning, faxing all of these like dinner invitations to have these, fundraising parties with these politicians and these political causes. And I did all the grunt work that no one wanted to do, right? No one wanted to go to do a fax machine. No one wanted to go to a bar after hours and collect the checks and, be the MC and introduce people, right? Like no one wanted to do that. But I was like, hey, I'm going to do it. And then I got to meet Mark Pincus. I got to meet Mark Benioff, right? Like I got to talk to them. Um, and I didn't realize that then. I didn't know who any of these people were at 22. Like I even got to meet the owner of the Golden State Warriors,
Nice.
and I got to go as a 22-year-old to sit on the floor. Like and so that's like an amazing experience that I had to put in these like crummy work hours where I'm working 80, 90 hours a week. A lot of it just like in these bars, just collecting checks and like playing MC and calling people and emailing people to get there. But I built like that kind of network, right? And I got that exposure to, oh wow, this is what the world of politics is like, and this is what how these leaders, how these executives got to those places that, you know, random people like me are now asking them for money or to show up for things.
That makes so much sense that, something similar, but not as interesting as your story, is that when I started recruiting, I would get so let's say Prudential would give me a job order for a branch examiner. Now, a branch examiner would be somebody who would fly to, let's say, Tampa and review and examine a branch office to make sure they're adhering to all the rules and regs. Then they'll go to New Orleans, and then they'll go to Kansas, and then they go to Iowa. And the reason they gave me those jobs, because most people didn't want to take it because it's a grind. You're living out of a suitcase. You're going from an airplane to the hotel, to the office, to the airplane, to the hotel. So it's just, at first, when you're young, these people would like it for a little bit, right? Like when you're 21, 22, it'd be cool.
I'm traveling for work.
You're like a big shot.
Miles,
yeah.
Right?
You're like a big shot. This is really cool.
Once in a while, yeah.
And then after a while, they get completely burnt out from doing it. So they would kind of just roll over, and they would give me the job because most recruiters didn't want to take it, because some would start and within 2 months they'd leave. And for recruiting, usually the contract says you have to stay 3 months working on the job for the recruiter to get paid. And if they left before, you put all that work and time and you get nothing. So a lot of them didn't want to take those jobs. I was too young and stupid. I was like, I'll take it. I'll do it. And then what happened is the people who I placed as a branch examiner would then go into a step up, and then a step up and step up. Wow. And I stayed in touch with these people. So then over time, they're the VPs, there's the directors, what have you. And then they were telling me, Jack, okay, I really appreciate you got me my first start. Now I want you to help place people for me, and here's what I need. So sometimes I think for the people listening to this, you want to take the dirty jobs. You want to take the grunty jobs that no one else is looking for. In fact, the whole premise of my business that I started, it was focused on compliance. And back when I started it, that was like a bullshit backwater. No one cared about it. It was like, turned up your nose. I swear to you, I would go I remember so clearly, I went to the doctor for something. He goes, hey, what do you do? And I'm a recruiter. What kind of recruiting? Compliance. He looks at me like, what's compliance? What is that? I don't know. It was like nothing. And that's when I was like, I know I'm in the right space, because I had that lane to myself, because everybody wanted to be a recruiter to place investment bankers, hedge fund guys, all those big ticket items. And I'm like, wait, why am I going to go into the lion's den with all these tough competitors where I have this lane that no one knows about, no one cares, and I'll just run it. I'll run the table and do the best. And fortunately for me, what happened is that with all the scandals and problems and issues, that whole space blew up. So so we blew up. It was crazy. We made a fortune because we were doing it when no one cared. So we learned, we made the connections, we networked, we knew the people, we knew the senior executives, they knew us. We had trust with each other. We'd go out to eat, go out to drink, go out to party. So then when things really took off, we were the go-to people because they knew us.
Yeah. So you built that trust and track record.
See, I was thinking, you're younger, too bad someone didn't tell you, hey, wait, don't just stop asking for donations from Benioff and others. Find a way to keep getting in touch with them and being on their radar. Because imagine all those years later, if you found a way to stay in touch somehow, some way, who knows? Oh my gosh, you would have been his right-hand person.
I had no idea what Zynga was or what Salesforce was. Isn't that funny? There were all these construction and development companies. And now you walk around not now, because you don't want to walk around downtown San Francisco now, but all these buildings that are going up, those were the early clients that no one wanted to really talk to. And I was their person, right? And I invited them to these fancy dinners and these cocktail and schmoozy events. I wish I had kept in touch with all those folks, because
so here's two things, Scott. I'm taking away from this. One is that I think sometimes taking those jobs no one else wants could be a huge win, thinking long term. Number
Create your
two,
niche, right?
yeah, number two, I think you and I had the same thing. We didn't have, it sounds like, and I think I know you well enough now, we didn't have parents or mentors who would say, hey, Jack, here's what you should do to kind of get your
Yeah.
career. Or, hey, Rick, you just met these really super successful people. Let's figure out how you can kind of leverage that. So like we like would like dope, 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 just going around and not
Right.
knowing how to do it. And so for the audience here, these are lessons. Like if you get in touch with these people, you want to keep in touch with them. You want to stay in touch. You want to find a reason to keep helping them. You're not just saying, hey, I want money from you, but how can I help you? What are you working on? Anything I could do for you? So to cultivate those relationships.
And I think what I learned from your story also is the guy sitting next to you, right? Who just might be a manager or a lead or a supervisor, or maybe his butt was in the seat 6, 12 months sooner than you. Eventually, just like you, they're going to get promoted. They're going to rise up the ranks. They might move to another company that's bigger, flashier, whatever, right? And so you're also networking when you're in the office, right? When you're in the
Absolutely.
trenches, kind of, it's almost like that, like hazing in a fraternity, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
it sucks and it's kind of pointless, but at the end, you've accomplished something with a random set of people together and you've built those bonds stronger and better because of it, right?
Right.
Where
Because now you have
you
this
did the
tight group of people who were working in the office together, and now you have this bond.
yeah, that did the 70, 80 hours a week on Excel, like updating the like 50 millionth spreadsheet together or writing the like 1,000th line of code together overnight at a hackathon grinding. And that person could go somewhere, be a founder, um, get that next level up at another company or bigger, better company. And you could follow them or they could keep in touch. And, you never know what's going to happen. Right. And I think that's the big part of networking that people miss. Right. I think people approach networking as in, oh, like it's very tactical. I need something from this
Right.
person or I want something. And so I'm only going to reach out to them for this reason. And it's like, no, the best networking is kind of natural, right? Where it's about, I know you, I know your track record, I know how you think, I trust you on one level. So when something does come up, you just raise your hand and I say, like, oh, actually, yeah, Jack, I know him. He's done this for me, XYZ. Let me connect you.
And you've spoken about this before, in that what happens too, if you're home, you got to do everything yourself. If you're in the office, there's always, hey, here's my guy to do this to help me out. Here's
Right,
this woman who's just like amazing at such and such. And
right,
then that helps out too. So think about all the time you take trying to figure out whether it's an Excel, maybe you're having trouble with your Excel spreadsheet, maybe you're having trouble just with your computer. Everything is a hassle. But if you're surrounded by people, even if it's not a full office, you have people to go to and find the experts and then stay in touch with them as you go on in your careers. So like you build upon it organically.
and think about all of the executives that we've had on the show that we've had the pleasure of interviewing, right? And a lot of them got into these higher ranks, these like more senior and
Mhm.
more visible jobs by just grinding out, staying at their company, volunteering for those projects, right? And having that willingness to say, you know what, I actually am a bit vulnerable here. I don't know how to do this. I've seen you working on this. You seem to just know the tips and tricks. Can you teach me? Right. And they build those like skills, they add to their toolbox. And they're able to kind of synthesize all of these different lessons and learnings. And it's cross discipline, it's cross project, it's cross functional. And they get these mentors and sponsors that are able to like pull them up and that's how they get to come on our show, right, and get interviewed and have those high ranks and high paying TC jobs. That's all part of it, right?
Dude, there is definitely correlation after like 60, 70, how many people we've spoken to. I've definitely noticed that the senior level executives, let's even say the CTOs,
Right.
You would think, yes, they're great technologists, but they also have really good personalities and really good communication skills. They're empathetic. They know how to schmooze. They know how to talk. They know how to befriend you. So they have that complete package. And I think they got the complete package from being around people, you know what I mean? And doing things and finding out what works. You know, when I say X, does that resonate with someone or does that sound bad? And I got to know not to do it again. So you kind of have that constant interactions with people and you hone your skills. And so now you have the tech skills, you know, software engineering skills, plus also you have those human skills. That's what gets them right. Think about how many times it's very common that you see that's how they got to the top.
Yeah, you like build those soft skills, and like if you're in the office and there's kind of like these like low risk, low hanging fruit projects that you could sign up for, to like build those soft skills without like these like incredible consequences. That's amazing, right? Like I have a funny story, another funny story from earlier in my career.
Yeah.
Um, I worked at a financial startup. I was one of the first communications PR hires. And one of the first projects that I had to do was work with the customer service team, right? Making sure that they spoke when they were emailing people, um, and responding to these like inquiries and complaints, that they spoke with like one consistent voice, right? And that it sounded like, yes, that is our company's brand. And I had to like start managing a lot of these people, right? And so suddenly I was like dealing with like their like personal lives and situations. And I'm like 24, 25,
Yeah.
right? And I just came on to teach you guys how to respond to complaints or questions about people's, credit and finances, right? Like that's what I signed up for. And I'm like navigating and negotiating the kind of personalities and different needs. And sometimes you just bomb and whiff. And seeing that like disappointing or frustrated look across from you, like you learned really quickly, like, I do not want to be in that awkward position again. Or I had also a mentor that was like, actually embedded part of that team. And they would pull me aside and say, like, yeah, Rick, you sucked. Like, that was a terrible thing to say. Do you know why it sucked? And like you're 24, 25.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you're willing to admit, sometimes you're not. And they pulled you aside and they walked you through, like, oh, this is like what you said. I'm assuming this is what you meant or why you said it, but this was how it was interpreted, right? And like I learned those like soft skills, like communication skills, even as a communications professional. I didn't have those skill sets. And it was at a low stakes, right? Where it was internal, it was a small team, it was people around my age, people entry level. So, they're more forgiving. And so by the time I was working with these like executives, right? Or these more senior people, these external stakeholders, I didn't mess up, right? And that was part of like being in the office, having that grit, having that patience, also having that humility to say like, yeah, I'm going to do the like weird thing, or I'm going to do the sucky thing, or I'm going to do the lame project. Um, and I'm a better professional, better leader, better executive because of it.
Now, for people who are working remotely, do you think they're putting in 8-hour days or are they or are they putting in like half days?
Yeah. So I have a funny story for you, Jack. There was a Business Insider article recently. The reporter discovered a very popular user poll online, and it asked exactly the question that you asked, or you sought to answer right now is, how many hours are you actually productive a day working from home? And about 45%, so nearly half of people answered 4 hours or fewer a day, which I get it, right? Because you're in like all these calls, you're in these meetings, you're kind of distracted working from home. I sometimes am. Um, and so it's not surprising, but wow, nearly half of people, 4 hours or fewer, are putting in like hard productive hours by their own admission. So it might even be like a overestimate. Maybe you're only doing 2 or 3 and you're going to say
Right,
you
right. So
do
they're
4.
amping it up. Like they don't want to say 2.5 because that's really bad. That maybe they'll
Yeah,
track me down and I'm going to get
3, 4.
fired.
Yeah.
Wait, so when it's 4, is that 4 like hours, but then you do other stuff, or just like 4 hours and I'm peacing out, going home, or I'm done.
Yeah, so I did the hard work for everyone, and I
Okay.
read through that crazy discussion thread on Blind
Okay.
that had like thousands of comments, and a lot of it was people saying, I don't feel productive because I'm working remotely. You have to be a lot more intentional about communicating with another person, right? So, like Jack, when I set up this call so we could record a podcast, I had to email you. I had to say, like, I want to meet with you at this time. We had to send a calendar invite. We had to actually show up. And now we're doing this, right? So everything's a lot more
Mhm.
intentional. It's a little bit more procedure. And so at these large companies, right? Maybe you're like a growth stage startup also. The amount of time even engineers are spending in these like meetings, 2, 3, sometimes 4 hours a day are unheard of, is not unheard of. And so I could see people saying, like, you know what? I don't know why I'm in all of these meetings. Some of these meetings could just be an update on a doc or an email or on Slack. And so I don't necessarily feel productive. But from an outsider's perspective or from a company's perspective, even, um, that's still work. They're
Mhm.
still working. It's just not as productive. Whereas perhaps inside the office, Jack and I, maybe we're sitting next to each other, and I just like scoot over and I'm like, "Hey, Jack, what do you think about this?" Right? We don't have to like send you an email and set up a time and both of us show up to a Zoom call. So maybe there's
So
something missing or
So
less
what
productive about it.
do you think that people, and would it be specifically like say software engineers, or we're talking just general tech people who could be product managers, project managers,
Everything.
accountants? Like
Yeah.
this is across the board, right? Or no, in terms of the 44
This
hours,
45% is across the board.
all
So,
different disciplines.
it's different
Hmm.
industries, disciplines, functions, seniority,
Oh, so it's not just
ages.
tech; it's in other places too.
Yes. And so it's all folks
Huh.
that self-identify as
And
working
is this
remotely in some way.
remote, or is this in office, or do they break it down that way?
It's remote. So it's all the
Oh,
folks that are working remote. How much do you work in a day? Was like the
wow. So
open-ended question.
okay, so this is all right. I'm trying to process this now. So I was thinking because of blind, I'm just thinking in terms of like software developers, right? And my take was going to be this for is well, you know what? If you're spending 4 hours deeply involved with coding, I could see like I got to just take a break. My head's going to explode. That's enough. And then maybe I'll do some soft work for another hour or so. Okay, I could almost get that. But this is like all different kind of. So it's not just that. It's like everybody.
Yeah, I mean, blind isn't just tech folks, right? So we have
Oh, so this is just for
bankers,
blind
and we have
people, or is it other people outside
this
of
is
blind?
just
This is just
blind
okay.
users, right?
Because finance, I know
Uh,
you have finance, you
we have
have
finance
all
people,
this.
we have business development,
Right.
sales, marketing. We have
Huh.
folks that work at airlines. We have folks that work in the government. And so it was a pool of over 9,000 blind users.
That's a lot.
And it was simple, straightforward. One question: how much do you work in a day? Summed up, about 45%, nearly half answered 4 hours or fewer.
So what do
And
you think
so
about that? Like, do you think that's accurate? Like, if you take that not just for the blind, but just if you extrapolate it just regular across, all industries, do you think that's really what it is or no? I don't know myself.
yeah, I mean, I think so. It's like speaking from my personal experience, right? So like I probably put in 50, 60 hours a
Mhm.
week, typically. And a lot of the time that I'm putting in during kind of your typical working hours, your 9 to 6, I'm sitting in meetings or I'm preparing documents or updates of like some vital spreadsheet. And I actually don't get into the kind of hard focus work until like the late afternoon or early evening,
But
right?
that
When I'm
counts as
actually
work,
putting the
though,
extra work.
right? Even that kind of stuff, that's work,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Okay.
But I can see myself or other people like in my situation saying, like, oh, how much work am I doing? Well, like the hard kind of head down focus work, that's not meetings or, this like kind of busy work or logistics might be 4 to 5 hours a day. That's probably right. Right. If you like strip away all of the other kind of, menial tasks, I think that's generalizable. It, it certainly didn't surprise me.
Well, I feel really stupid for working way more hours. Like, what's wrong with me? I didn't get the memo that I could just don't have to do that.
I mean, well, there's you and me, right? Like we're putting 60. You might be doing plus, right? And I think it's just like different work, right? Um, where you're probably like out on calls and like you're speaking face to face with people like stakeholders, clients, right? And partners. That makes a bit more sense. My meetings tend to be a bit more internal when I'm not speaking with reporters outside, right? And so, some of those meetings internally, do I consider it work? Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Now, I don't mean
And
to
so
get anybody in trouble, but do you think like the executives of like Meta or Amazon or what have you would take a closer look at their people and say, like, what are you guys doing every day? Like, do you think because of this, and Rick, I shouldn't say this because everyone's going to hate us, but do you think because not just because of this one, but just in general, the tenor of the times, where these companies might start putting in spyware and other things into, the computers to see like, what? How many hours are they working? What are they doing when they're working? Are they on their computer but just, shopping online, looking at porn? Like what are you doing?
well, I hate to break it to you, but a lot of huge companies are doing
Mhm.
exactly this, right? So on Blind, we had Tesla employees leak the emails that they're getting from HR on Blind saying, um, "Hey Rick, we noticed from your badge entries and exits every day that you in the last 2 weeks you only went to the office 7 times out of 10 workdays. Please explain your absences." So these are
Yeah.
actual automated emails that are going out, according to these leaked emails that have been posted on Blind at Tesla. Uh, we've seen um, bankers at JP Morgan Chase post on Blind. My manager is tracking when we're going to the trading floor, when we're going to the office, what days, if we're late, if we're using the bathroom too long,
Wow.
when we're logging into the computer, when we're logging into the terminal. And so there's these like, oh, my managing director is getting these reports every single Friday. Like there's all these reports where these huge blue chip big companies, they are doing exactly that. They're tracking bathroom breaks, tracking when you go into the office. They're tracking absences. They're tracking tardy times. And I'm sure there are other companies out there that we just don't know about that are doing exactly like
Wow.
you're suggesting, where they're looking at, you know, how many hours you spend at a meeting on Google Meets or Zoom, or what web pages you're actually using or what programs you're opening, right? To measure your productivity. I mean, that is certainly possible, and I'm sure there are companies out there, there's software certainly that exists to do this.
You think because, you know, up until recently when, started all these layoffs and kind of hiring freezes, that they were just, the leadership didn't really care. They were minting money, everything was fine. Now that things are different, a little tougher, that maybe more companies are going to start implementing what you're talking about, saying, hey, times are a little tougher. We got to tighten the belts. We got to make sure that you're actually working and you're not doing TikTok videos saying, hey, hi, this is my day working at Twitter. I'm getting my mocha, iced coffee in the morning. And, those kind of stuff. Like
Oh yeah,
just to clamp right down on that, huh?
I mean, I think you're right, but I don't think it's out of a concern about kind of saving money or trying to identify people to lay off or anything like that. It's certainly not budget motivated. It's more productivity focused, right?
Right.
So Mark Benioff recently said, "Oh, I looked at our sales rep, right? Salesforce is
Yeah.
heavy workforce, and a lot of it is those salespeople, and it was something like uh 20, like it was like the Pareto principle, right? Like 20% of people are bringing 80% of the sales and 80% of the revenue, right? What are the remaining people doing? And he used that as an opportunity at Salesforce to identify people that just needed to be coaching, right? For coach. Like, oh, maybe you need to be updated on kind of the latest new product features. Maybe you need to be kind of drilled on how to identify objections and respond to them when a prospect contacts you and says XYZ, right? And so these saw it more as like a way to figure out how to get people to be more productive and get that coaching because, when you're working remotely from home, as opposed to like maybe in a call center or maybe in an office where you can overhear your coworkers. When I was in college, I I signed up for a job really late, an on-campus job really late at Cal, and I got the job that no one wanted, which was the call center. So I'm literally calling alumni, sometimes current students, their parents, and asking them to donate money to the university. And that was like, like really like lamest job. And I struggled with it at the beginning, right? It was very, very challenging. But when you're in between the calls, like hanging up and dialing for your next call, I'm overhearing the people next to me and kind of the tips and tricks that they're doing, like the openings that they're saying, the things that they're saying, like, yeah, I understand that it's a lot to donate at once, but would you consider doing, $1 a day?
Yeah.
Would you be willing to give up like less than a cup of coffee a day to support the number one public university, right? And like just like throwing all those superlatives and all of those things in and making people feel good, breaking it down the total to show value. Like those were all tricks that were really helpful for me to kind of pick up through osmosis as a 19, 20-year old, right? Um, and you don't have that culture when you're in your own living room, you're by yourself, and you're working on your laptop, and you just can't benefit from other people's experiences and kind of knowledge there.
It's interesting. And so you feel that it's not as if it's punitive that they're looking at, let's say, Salesforce to go after. It's more of making sure that the person, particularly if they're remote, knows what they need to do, have the tools to get what they do. So, so it's more, which is better than, because I was thinking of initially more like looking to point a finger and maybe you have to worry about your job, but it seems no, that's not really it. I just want to make sure, is this person doing the best they can and contributing the most they can and getting the most value for him or herself as well as the organization. So it's really more that as well, as opposed to being worried about like I'm just being spied for the sake of being spied on.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Jack,
Yeah.
this probably more intimately than other people that are listening, right? So you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, and you have the responsibilities that you have on your plate are completely different responsibility or skill set that someone working for you might have, right?
Mhm.
Where, if you fail, there's so many people on your payroll that are depending on you for their livelihood, right? Where the stakes are ultimately much higher for you, right? Where if you can't get everyone to be productive or the business to do well, like everyone's out of a job. And that just that pressure is so incredible,
Right. I
right?
don't need any other pressure, like, software to monitor me. I just got, yeah, I have no choice kind of
Right.
thing.
Where it's like I need to be able to like
Yeah.
sign the paychecks and make sure
Yeah.
everyone gets paid, right? That is an incredible motivator. And if you're early in your career, your kind of main priority is to learn and is to kind of complete the task that you're given. If you're a leader, if you're an executive, your responsibility ends up being making objective based, right? So
Mhm.
making sure that um, this project goes out on time, hits the revenue goals, and that kind of thing. It's impact focused, right, rather than task focused. And part of that impact focus is making use of the resources available, right? So I'm always telling my more junior people on the team, like, do you have the resources available to do your job, right? Like, are people meeting with you? Like, do you find it easy to speak with executives to share your opinion, right? Do you need me to kind of do that heavily blocking and tackling up front to like book those meetings for you, pay for those software, those tools that you need? I need to make sure that they're productive, right? And so I'm checking in. I'm also checking with the team, the dynamics, and saying like, oh, are they getting along so that they can actually like focus on their work, or are they kind of boggled down by like, petty things or like logistics or like interpersonal things, right? And so your job as a leader a lot of these times is to make sure everyone's effective, right? And so you're looking at this data, you're using these tools, I imagine, to figure out, gosh, like, are the people that I want to succeed, that I want, that need to like serve this critical function as a part of this greater process or as a greater part of the company, are they doing what I expect them to do or what I need them to do or what I need them to ramp up to? That is probably the biggest motivator, I imagine.
It makes a lot of sense. And I wonder too, should I advise people in light of this survey to play it safe and maybe just put in some extra hours?
Maybe
Don't get
five
mad at me for
hours.
saying this. I'm just trying to help out, guys. Don't get mad at me. Don't blame the messenger. So I wonder, seriously, does it make sense maybe for people in light of this? Because you don't have to. You get numbers like that, and it goes viral, and people,
Oh, of course.
executives think about it. So if you're the one who puts in more hours, and I'm not saying just work for the sake of work, but put in some more time and effort, and it's going to come back to you anyway. So you'll stand out. So in case there's another kind of downturn, and let's say there are going to be layoffs down the road, they're going to go after probably the people who are productive and who aren't, working. So probably makes sense just to play it safe, make sure you're being productive, you're doing stuff, you're making things happen, so that you keep your job, and this way everything's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would even go further. So, I mean, I have I'm just like a storyteller today,
Mhm.
but I have a fun anecdote for you. And I think maybe it's just unique to my like leadership style, but I had an intern on my team where, at the company less than one year, most junior person. And we have these like team meetings. And, my kind of primary objective for her is like learn as much as you can about marketing, as much about PR, as much about communications as possible. So I'm going to start inviting you to different spreadsheets and different meetings. And there's no real objective except just to learn.
Mhm.
And if you have any questions about what's discussed or what people said in terms of like terms or jargon or metrics, um, ask me or ask that person after. Like that's your primary job. And so I set up this person with a lot of meetings, filled up their Google Drive with all these like files and folders and spreadsheets. And I was really impressed when recently she asked me, like, oh, can we shorten this meeting? And there's this other meeting. Oh, can I leave this meeting and drop out? I want to protect my time. I want to protect my calendar.
Look at that.
And she's an intern telling, a senior director, oh, I actually want to like not do this, or I don't want to be in this. And here's why. Like, I appreciate it. I learned. Thank you for including me, but I'm not adding value anymore. Or I'm not getting value out of this meeting anymore. And I want to do other work. And she was really nervous. She was really shy asking me about these things. And I was so impressed. I was like, yes, this is actually music to my ears, right? Because you're defending your time. You have a clear objective. You know what you want to accomplish. You took my kind of mission for you to learn everything to heart, and you're acting on it. I was like, yeah, just X out. Don't even ask me. Just like cancel out of the meeting. And if we need you or if you want to join back again. But go nuts. Say no. Say no. And
Well,
that's
that's
the best
cool.
thing
That's
you could
great.
do.
Hey, you're a good boss.
I tried.
Yeah.
But that's a crazy thing, right? Where I think a lot of people they get into this habit of they end up only working 4 hours or fewer because they feel like they can't protect their time or they don't protect their time. And They get bogged down in like menial tasks where it could be automated or given to someone else as a stretch project for them to learn and develop, right? Um, like all of these little different things, they seem small, but they actually do
They add
quite add
up.
up, right?
That's that. Can I tell you?
Because
That's something that I still deal with because I'm doing remote. That the little things, they don't seem like much. I equate it to this. If you're outside, right, and you have these little gnats and they're just like bothering you, it's not terrible, but it's just like, oh, and it's just annoying. So it's like all day long, you have those little annoying things that just distract you. Exactly. So if you could get rid of all those distractions and just be in the flow, be in the zone, and just hyper focus on it and be productive, that's the best.
so this is something that's unique to Blind, but internally we have a Google Calendar, and we don't let people set recurring meetings after a few months. And it's a forcing function where if that meeting really does need to be recurring for more times, then you have to take that extra step and set up that new calendar invite and include, manually invite people and make sure it's the right people again. Because, how many times have we been at a company where it's like, oh, this is the team meeting and we do it every day, or it's this daily stand up. And those recurring meetings, they never get canceled over time. And, a few months in, or gosh, 1 year in, you forget the whole purpose of the meeting again. Right. And you're just doing it to do it. And I imagine, like, that 55% of people that, you know, or the 45% of people that say 4 hours or fewer, they're probably in those like unproductive meetings that shouldn't
Did
be
you think they
meetings.
include those in that 4 hours, or
I
maybe they
think
exclude
people
because they know
naturally
it's bullshit?
do. No,
What do you
I
think?
think, yeah, I think naturally people do, right? Because it's a common complaint on Blind. Like it's almost like a meme, like, God damn it, I was in this meeting that should have been an email. Or oh, like I'm spending so much time in these like bureaucratic
Yeah.
functions, right? Like that's kind of like the criticism of big tech, and certain companies are guiltier of this than others, right?
It's everywhere. Like I'll get that recruiting, right? We'll have a reoccurring, meeting for, let's say, some assignment we're working on. And it'd be like every Thursday at 3 o'clock. And it's like, obviously, if I had candidates, that'd be good. I'm sending it to you. We don't have to wait every Thursday to go. I mean, like it's torture. So then you got to go and go through the introductions and the idle chatter and the chit chat and the this and how's the weather and blah, blah, blah. And like, it's
Right.
just wasting time. And then, you really have nothing to show that week anyway. So like, it's just, I think what happens is this, and I want to be sure, because like, I don't want to lose our audience now. Now they're like, all right, guys, enough. So, but we do have a teaser. So just stay with us for 1 minute, because we got something we're going to do for the next one, this next episode. This is going to be kind of interesting and fun. We could bet on it, I guess. So what happens is this. Now I've lost my train of thought. I forgot what I was going to say now. So forget it. We'll just end it.
Yeah,
This is
we'll
cool.
save it to the next. Thanks everybody. And hopefully you didn't listen to these like two lamos, these two
Yeah.
bootlickers chat about remote work. And really, like, a lot of this like career advice we think really could apply, because you could truly stand out if you're the only one doing these things.
Okay. Should we give just a little teaser for what maybe we'll talk about for the next one?
Yeah,
About
the next special emergency episode.
the
That's right.
guy who sent out 1,000 emails, 1,000 resumes, and
Yeah, so there's a former Microsoft employee was affected, unfortunately, by one of the recent waves of layoffs at Microsoft. Uh, his LinkedIn post went viral.
so we'll leave it at that. So this way, when we come back, we have something we could use that in another topic, and maybe we could have a pool to see who could guess like what happened, what's the real story behind this, or someone who knows this person and could tell us,
What's the story here?
what's the real story?
1,000
This
job
sounds shady. This
applications,
sounds weird.
viral post.
Yeah. So maybe we could take a look at that.
Awesome. Thanks,
Excellent.
everybody.
Come on.